Hi, this is Adam Eliel Berkowitz for Wrestling the Angel. It's my new video book project. I'm trying to create content for people who are biblically minded and love Israel. And I think it's highly significant that the first person that I'm interviewing for this project is David Nekrutman, an old and dear friend who he helped me navigate some very strange waters. And last week, David raised uh, an interesting issue. He's been working um, getting equipment for IDF soldiers, which is a very holy mission. I remember reading the verse where it said that at the time of the Philistines, there were only two swords in Israel, and that was Saul and Jonathan. And equipment to fight a battle is an essential part of serving God, even as a free person. Um, and David, as holy as his mission is, and as enthusiastic as he is, the fact that he's doing it raises an interesting question. Why should a private citizen be getting equipment, acquiring equipment for a professional army? That doesn't happen. So David, first of all, thanks so much for doing this video with me. We always have some interesting things to talk about. First, so tell me what exactly you've been doing for the IDF since the war broke out.
So first, I have an organization called the Isaiah Projects. I have 23 years of Jewish relational background and experience serving this higher calling to bring Jews and Christians together, first with the Israeli Consulate in New York, and then followed with Rabbi Shlomo Riskin in creating the Center for Jewish Christian Understanding and Cooperation. And my third chapter since September of 2021, the formation of the Isaiah Projects, which is creating Hebraic resources for Christians to discover the roots of their faith. And as you know, the war broke out on not only a Shabbat, but on Shmini Atzeret, which is the 8th day, in conjunction with Simchat Torah. Usually that's a 2-day holiday outside of Israel, but inside it's one fusion of one day. And I live in Netanyahus. So there was no sirens going off in the morning, didn't know anything about the war, went to synagogue, praying, actually dancing with the people in the synagogue, because out of the celebration of what Simchat Torah is, the rejoicing of the Torah scroll, God's word, all of a sudden in mid-morning we get some type of news that there was a terrorist attack. And then a few hours later, anyone who is a reservist has to go to their phone. You're being called to your base. So as a religious Jewish person, seeing my friends go off to Gaza as reservists, later we would find out 360,000 reservists were mobilized, which is the largest mobilization of reservists ever in the history of Israel.
And it
That's
was more
in
than
75 years.
100%. It was more than 100% of the men they called up.
Right.
Israel was so motivated, so unified in this that I have friends who are over 40 years old who were showing up for the army, uncalled. They showed up.
Uncalled for, but as a person on Shabbat, not really realizing what's going on and having a son, my middle son is in the Air Force. He was sleeping. So I came home and I told him, you have to open up your phone. And then he had to go to his base, took his car and went on Shabbat to go to his base. It was like the strange feeling, like what is really going on? I didn't open up the news. I didn't open up my phone. We waited till after the holiday, and then we were finally realizing the magnitude of what was happening that morning. So here my friend is going off to war, but as a reservist doesn't have the necessary equipment to protect himself. Uh, and the
I
second day
just
of the
want to add
war,
that you're talking about the southern border and the Air Force.
southern yet, and there were
And
friends of ours that went to the northern border as well,
I
but
know
we
for
won't
a
talk about the
fact that
northern
there are
border.
people doing it from outside of Israel. They're bringing in equipment from outside of Israel. And I just bumped into a guy. He said at the pet store, and he said, "Yeah, yesterday I handed out 1,000 G-Shock watches." And he also handed out 1,000 flashlights that fit on the helmets. We're talking about basic equipment, even stuff like neck warmers, gloves, things that
Jackets,
jackets, yeah.
socks. Yeah. So again, for the reservists, I think this is important to distinguish between people who are drafted, who are mandated in their service between 18 and 21 to serve the Army, career officers and career military people versus the reservists. So I'm concentrating only on the reserves because there is enough for the regular military. The problem was that reservists left without being prepared what they were going into. And literally, I have friends. The rabbi of the shul, he's in the tank unit near Tzfat, and he's going off, and he didn't take his flip flops. He didn't know he needed flip flops, right? So it was funny that we have to get the rabbi flip flops to serve. But be as it may, 360,000 people for me on the second day of the war, because I saw my friend with really not having the protective gear needed. I got involved right away. So up until that point, I'm working with I'm running the Isaiah projects. I'm working on curriculum where I'm fusing Hebraic thought and critical thinking skills for the high school, homeschool Christian world. And I drop everything to deal with just protective and gear for reservists. And then I was one of the very first team members to try to bring ceramic plates into Israel and during the first week of the war. But while I was doing that, I hook up with Bridges for Peace with Peter Fast, and we bag 500 bags of food. We bring it to Sderot on the third day of the war. So if everyone understands that Sderot was really bombarded with terrorists, not only
Didn't they
that,
take over?
they
They
had
took
to
over, I think it was at least
took over the
one
police
police
station,
station.
and
Yeah,
there were so many terrorists in the police station, they had to bomb the police station. So we came the day afterwards
good Lord.
to bring in 500 bags. Thank God, in the time that we went in and went out, there was no missiles going. The next day, we went with Zion's Bridge with Robbie Coleman to bring medical equipment and water to Barzilai Hospital. There, we actually had to dance around missiles in order to get everything um, to where it needed to be. With the medical center, that's with missiles. So what I started to do is just say, listen, this is what we're doing. I put it on Facebook, and then all of a sudden money started to come in to saying we want to help. We see that what you're doing on the ground, and basically for the last 115 days, it's finding what the immediate need is, finding the donor, doing the logistics, and next. Um, Now that we're 114 days in the war, as I said to Adam, I'm actually still buying Leathermans for reservists to do simple tasks that they need to do. We did this for a tank unit.
The first time, I still
We
remember the first time I saw Leatherman in the army. It was like, wow, because you're screwing things together, cutting things. There's a million and one things that you need a Leatherman for. Zeroing in your gun. I and I still remember the first time I saw an LED flashlight in the army. It was like, wow, this is, and there are things just like you're in the army in the winter time, and even something like a cup of noodles, instant ramen noodles. It's just, oh, you have no idea how much it gives you. It's just little things, and
Yeah,
especially ceramic plates for your
right. That was the
vest.
ceramic place in the first place. But the problem is that as you know, the country shut down, so you have to find a supplier.
Mm.
And finding supplies like an LED flashlight or battery pack chargers and all that other stuff, you have literally my son basically did this hashtag on me saying, I know a guy. My Abba knows a guy. And that's how I was able to do what I was doing because I knew somebody in order to get supplies. And that's because in the first week of the war, besides working on protective plates, we evacuated 50 families from Mish'en, a moshav that is outside the mandated evacuation zone. It's like across the street from that boundary. They were still getting missiles. Their lives are still on the line. They don't have bomb shelters. So with the help of a group of Jewish and Christian organizations, Jonathan Feldstein from Genesis 123 Foundation, Peter Fast from Bridges for Peace, Robbie Coleman, Zion's Bridge, Zion's Gate International, Sam Phillip, who is an amazing artist in Jerusalem. We all pooled our resources and we evacuated 50 families.
Thank God.
And then because of that, CBN News covered us, and then I was able to get more and more stuff because people's contacts and supply chain opened up to me. And our good friend Elliot Chodoff, in the middle of all this, is asking me, can you help out with a reservist unit on the north? So I just want to let you know that the reservist unit in the north, Golani, who stopped Hezbollah coming in about 2.5 weeks ago, is the unit that we supply basically everything for them: their
Very
clothing,
good.
their boots, the helmets, Leatherman, so on and so forth. So I just want to let you know that you never know what's going on. And the medical bags that we donated a few weeks ago to the Gaza Brigade 143 in the Rayam base, that medical bag was used to help the injured who with the rocket attack that took place
Hmm.
and killed 21 soldiers. So there were people who were injured, but the medical bags that we donated were used to treat the injured.
So
So
with all this you've been doing, what rank has the IDF given you?
I'm just listen. If it saves a life, that's really what I'm looking for. There's no rank. We have the opportunity
Sure,
to.
but I was trying to emphasize you're not in the army. You're not part
I'm
of
not
the
in the
army. You're
army.
not
No,
working for
no,
the army, and you're not being funded by the army.
correct. This is
And
all
that's
private donations. And your question is, why am I, a simple Israeli American citizen, trying to go ahead and find a Leatherman, which you would expect the IDF to ensure supplies? It seems like there's a lot of money. There is, but the budget allocation priorities are kind of weird once you're inside of what's going on the
sure.
ground. And this is what I want to talk. You were gracious enough to allow me to be part of your first episode for your channel right now. But I think this is a good thing because part of what we do, Adam, is to talk about the faith angle of things. And as much I am proud to be an Israeli and proud to be part of this country and move redemptive history a little closer to having the ultimate messianic days unfold, um, there seems to be a sin of hubris that's taking place with the leadership. So I want to divide the reservist and the soldier who's serving and the leadership. And what I have witnessed, and many people are saying here in Israel, it's being written about in Israel, but it's not going out to the masses, is literally a sin of hubris. When the Israel Defense Forces says we have enough, then the question of a donor, and it's a legitimate question, saying, well, your own IDF says you have enough. Why are you asking me for money to buy something? And I have to explain to them that it's a sin of hubris. We have, thank God, we have more supplies than we started off in the beginning of the war, but each reservist unit is looking for a donor to get monies to pay for equipment. So the regular soldiers are taken care of, but the reservists have been left behind. And I even say so much so that our prime minister, who will have his judgment day of what led up to October 7th, I'm not surprised of what Hamas did. I'm shocked
Mhm.
of what happened, of the failure, the magnitude of the failure to have for October 7th to unfold, and the reliance of so much on technology and not really paying attention to what's really needed on the front lines, even though people have said in the army itself and those in the kibbutzim have alerted to the IDF something is strange on the border, but then you do a force reduction
Right.
during the holidays after 50 years of the Yom Kippur War. So that's Judgment Day that our prime minister and the rest of the government coalition partners have to go through as far as what punishment they deserve. But at the same time, you can't go ahead and say to the world, we're good as far as supplies, when we know in fact that no, it's not. If we would have coordinated like a FEMA, like in the United States always has a FEMA, then the monies could have been designated to be able to help out both the military career people and those drafted and those are reservists.
You
And
know, it
because of the hubris, because of the sin of hubris, I am still working red eye, getting up at 2:30 in the morning, sometimes 5:30 in the morning, staying up until midnight, whatever it is, and working on trying to get equipment still, now 115 days in the war.
there's someone said to me, the only person in Israel who doesn't know that Benjamin Netanyahu's political career is over is Benjamin Netanyahu. After what happened, just like in 73, when it was a horrible, horrible, I don't want to say surprise, but they really caught us with their pants down. Um, it led to a total change in government. And that was when Menachem Begin came in. And I'm almost positive that that's what's going to happen here. Even though there are very few people in Israel who are talking politics, it's really take care of business, and after business is taken care of, we'll take care of business again. We'll clean house. That being said, I'm always shocked. I remember one time I showed up in Miluim and it took 3 days to get my gun. So I was 3 days in the army with no gun. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is sure proof that the only way the IDF wins wars is when God helps us, because it sure isn't happening through our good efforts. It was really a comedy of errors. And I remember one of the incursions into Lebanon, my boss went in, and they had prepared for a war that they weren't going to fight. Everyone had short weapons and anti-terrorist weapons, which are meant for fighting inside buildings. They didn't have long weapons for open field contact. The Sagar missiles totally caught them by surprise. They had difficulty getting water out to the field. They had difficulty getting food. It was really horrible. And I think it's happening again. We've been so used to fighting an enemy in Samaria, fighting in Jenin, fighting in Shechem, and then having a top-heavy Air Force and anti-missile aspect of the army. But when it comes to regular warfare, going in and fighting building to building, we had just let that lapse, and we didn't have it. So we're fighting a war that we really didn't prepare for, or that the government didn't prepare for. And that's where we end up with all these holes that you're trying to stop up. I want to emphasize, I'm going to include,
But you're dealing with tactical. I'm dealing with protective. I want to make a difference. I don't deal with tactical. I'm trying to
okay,
protect the soldier or have the soldier actually function to do the work they need to do. Like a Leatherman, for example. It's
sure.
crazy how many Leathermans, and that's even the medical units. The medics on the ground. Like I'm now an expert on different models of Leathermans, but a medical unit, reservist unit, needs a raptor, which is surgical scissors. Because if someone gets hurt, they have to be able to cut. A typical Leatherman has a pliers with tools on the side. That doesn't help a medic. So
Right.
you had to find those, and to find that was crazy. And then if it didn't, you have to wait on a back order.
I
Like
remember, I don't know
it,
if you know this, but I was a combat medic in the IDF. And when we got those, we called them a malak, the medical scissors. And they're really amazing. You just take them and you can cut right through any clothing and through seat belts and they go through everything. But oi, if you lost your pair, if you lost your scissors, it was like 100 shekels for the scissors, and you got written up. It was crazy. They're like they say, rare as hen's teeth. You can't find them.
yeah. And now because the war is extended into the winter, and this is a pretty brutal winter, especially if you're serving in the north. But and thank God we have blessings of rain. But if you're in the field, rain is not the most conducive way to go ahead and protect, to fight. And
Right.
it's really cold. And I'm trying to work with Elliot right now because Elliot is an expert in weather whether and how you fight a war, because typically the current um, gear that a person wears, the clothing, is not suitable for winter. And you
Sure.
have to actually be layered in a particular way with a particular type of clothing in order to ensure that you don't get hypothermia. I know it sounds weird to think you can get hypothermia in Israel, but right now, and because I think you live in the north,
I
Adam, right?
do. And we've had at
At
least
nighttime,
2 weeks
it's cold.
solid of nonstop rain, heavy
Rain,
rain,
yeah,
literally nonstop for 2.5 weeks. And it's cold at night. Okay, it doesn't get down below freezing, but last night we got down to freezing. And I'm just thinking, wow, those guys are intense and they're away from home and they're wearing the same clothes all day, every day. And if it gets wet, it stays wet. So,
100%. So because it looks like we're gonna, we're hitting almost 120 days of the war. This thing is not going to stop before 120. It's a good time to reflect because we know that Moses, we always wish people that you should reach 120. In this instance, I wish we didn't, but we have to reflect where we are right now. And for me, I have the honor to do what I'm doing, but at the same time, it's a question on leadership. Why go ahead and continue to do the same line that you have everything? I sent you an article last week, and this is part of the reason why we're doing the interview. It's in Ma'ariv. Ma'ariv is one of the major newspapers in Israel. And Mobileye, it's reported in the news. Mobileye is a major company in Israel. They're the ones that if you're in your car, in the latest car these days, and you're sort of veering off the road a little bit, you'll have that sound to warn you that you're veering off a little bit. That's Mobileye. They produce that technology. But someone in their company, I'm still trying to find out who, has a one-stop shop list of what the reservist needs. And that list was given over to the IDF but not accepted. And I'm like, wait a second.
wow.
What, like, this story should be bigger, but it's not. And this goes to the core thing of hubris. Like, why do you think you don't need help? You did the greatest mobilization in Israel's history. People flew in proudly to serve as a reservist.
Oh, many did.
Don't
Yeah,
leave your
sure.
reservists
Sure.
behind. There's been stories you and I know about that there were rich people at the counter at El Al in New York, and anyone who was going to take a flight to Israel to serve paid for it, paid for the flight to go back. I mean, there are concerned citizens around, both Jewish and non-Jewish. I work a lot with Christians, but they want to help, but they really want to understand how first of all how we got here. That's number one. Understandably so that we're here and we have to take out Hamas, which I really don't understand what that means at the end of the day. I know I gave you a joke last week where we were discussing this, like, what does it mean to take out Hamas? Does it mean the janitor? Does that guy have to go to end the war? Is the I like, where is the line? Because it seems like we got 30 to 40% of the people out. The question is, how much more do we need to do this?
Do we have to take
Have
out
to be concerned.
all of the UNRWA, the United
Yeah.
Nations people? Who else? Does it
So
include the
so that
Palestinian
this is the
Authority?
question.
Does it include
Yeah,
Hezbollah?
correct.
This is
Houthis
really a
now coming in
multi-headed
from
snake.
Yemen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in
So
the
the
Houthis, sure.
Houthis coming from Yemen. So the thing is, as long as and we still have hostages that need to be
And we
brought
still have
back.
us.
And what you're seeing right now, at least through the Bring Them Home Now campaign, is this organic uh, protest against the prime minister and the government saying, how much longer and how many hostages' lives have to be sacrificed in order to continue the war. And this is personal to me because when you're in this, you meet the families of those who have loved ones in Gaza still. Avi Shemrez, I'm known as Avi Lulu. We did this whole wristband Bring Them Home campaign, and unfortunately, him and his son and his two friends, unfortunately, were shot by IDF. That ended up, like this guy was, I know, very much pro Bibi at one time, but now very much against what's going on. And like, it's a different feeling when you're dealing with this every day. And then if you're outside of Israel, looking sporadically, whatever news reports are out there. So I think this is important because Adam, you have an audience that it speaks to outside of Israel and need to be understand the complexity of the situation.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. People will contact me and they'll very sweetly, "Are you okay?" I'm fine. I'm actually very rarely reminded of the war until I suddenly am. Meaning, like a couple days ago, we had an alarm. We live very near Kiryat Shmona, which is getting hit by rockets almost every day, but and from Hezbollah. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 times we've been in the shelters, and they were drones from Iraq. We're looking at a war that has really changed everything. It's not Israel against a few terrorists hiding in a basement in Jenin or Shechem, and occasionally these horrible rockets that are poorly made from Gaza. This is a new thing. This is the snake rising up, and if it's not taken care of entirely right now, it will never go away, and it might even win, God forbid. So that's the reality we're looking at. The flip side is if I go anywhere you go in Israel, it looks pretty much the same. I mean, when we don't have something in the supermarket, it's the war. When we don't get mail, it's the war. Which is they're not horrible things, but at the same time, Tel Aviv got hit by rockets yesterday, and that's a real thing. It's kind of like the best of times, the worst of times, as Charles Dickens said. It's not bad, but it's actually horrible. I think this is a real existential crisis. That's why all of Israel is unified. Even the liberal Jews from America, most of them have woken up to what this means for us and them. So this was really a game changer, I think, not just for Israel. I think the enemy has made its first move. Um, and I think that's where we're holding. And the fact that we really weren't prepared, I think it's hubris, as you said, from the side of the leaders. And we were kind of lulled into it because no one wants to think that we're in this kind of danger. And we are, and we were. So it's really on one hand, things are fine. And on the other hand, they're really, really not.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also think that there's a responsibility of a stewardship when you're in the war and you're addressing what the needs are for our first responders. On top of that, even rebuilding. So thank God the Isaiah Projects
Yeah.
is part of the rebuilding efforts.
Yeah.
Even the office that's needed to do the rebuilding efforts. So we have the office of Yeshuvah to return. So I'm doing that with the Rayon base, Gaza Brigade 143, and they're responsible for 60,000 people coming back to the Gaza envelope on the Israeli side on the Gaza border. They didn't have money to have an office to do the operations that now close to 100 reservists are part of right now. That means they have to secure each of the kibbutzim, all the communities near the Gaza border, return of the educational system, the agricultural system. A lot of our fruits and vegetables come from that area. And because it's some parts are still a military zone, it's hard to go ahead and come back at full capacity. This is the responsibility of the unit. And they were asking me, David, you've helped us with such and such in the past. Can you help us with actually getting a caravan office? And I'm like, yeah. But in back of my mind, like even in the rebuilding, there's not enough budget in the IDF to get a caravan. This is the reality on the ground. So an honor to do this in partnership with Christians who are really concerned for Israel. Same time, it raises up the question, which needs to be brought to attention of leadership. what is going on in your budget allocation priorities. And don't tell me you have enough when we know we don't.
Hmm. So just to give our people an idea, what's the next thing you're going to be handing out?
The next thing is actually bags. There are reservists that don't have the proper bags.
Oh my gosh. That's
So
something
no,
that
but this is
every
very important. This is important.
it's
You know,
so
each
important. Every Israeli parent buys a duffel bag for their 17-year-old kid before he goes off to war, and he uses it for the rest of his life. These big green, it's a duffel bag, but it's got shoulder straps. And
right, but these
if
are
you don't
reservists.
have
Remember,
it,
these
what
are
do you put your stuff
reservists.
in?
But these are reservists, and you can't take
Yeah.
a bag that you used 20 years ago. Okay, so let's just be practical.
And no one
Can't take the
expected to go
bag.
back into the
No, I
army. So,
expected to go back like in this capacity and serve for over 90 days and not see your family. And then certain units can't use the duffel bag that they were drafted into the army with because of what they do on the ground, they need something that's lighter or has more pockets. The gear equipment has to be placed in a certain way. Like yesterday, what I was dealing with, it sounds crazy. It just really sounds crazy. I donated, I was able to get a donation for 30 bags. We took 10 of the bags that I had because they said these are amazing bags because
with
the
the
flexibility of the
two shoulder
straps,
straps.
two shoulder straps, but more than that, you're able to put things on the outside that are
Ah,
needed, that you could put extra equipment on the sides. Okay, so they said it's a great bag. We want to know if we could take our medical bags that are bulky and test them out if we could put all the medical equipment in, or do we need
hmm,
we need instead of 60-liter bag, we need a 65-liter bag. And then some units need a 90-liter bag,
yeah.
because of the amount of their equipment, because of the amount of time they're spending time in the field, so they're going to need more. So again, I look at this as a little crazy because these bags are quite expensive. You can
Yeah.
a bag can run up about $600 a bag, depending how big the bag is. Um, so again, you have to know a guy, reduce the prices because you want to be a good steward with the donation. But yeah, I'm dealing with bags right now for reservists.
I still remember when I was drafted, they issued you an IDF kit bag, an IDF duffel bag. And it had one strap with these metal clips that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. And you kind of slung it across your back and it would swing around and knock you over half the time. And then there were the rich kids who had the really nice bags. This is why I'm making a big deal out of it, with the two padded straps that they could put it on their back and it was there. And it was green so that the officers didn't make a big deal, and that was luxury. And you're carrying your life around on your back. You're not home. You don't have any place to drop stuff off. So it's really important. It's really, really important. I could totally hear that. Thank
Now
God.
remember, you have 360,000 reservists. Many of them are married and are parents.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have to think about the families. Like, again, I'll go back to just my local community. My rabbi, again, in the tank unit near Tzfat, he was away for almost 3 months before he was able to come home for a Shabbat, and then he had to go return. But he has he has I think 5 kids at home, 4 or 5 kids at home. And here are here's the wife running the household.
Yeah.
So we decided to do a campaign just to give a like Shabbat flowers from the husbands who are on the
Oh, that's
front
beautiful.
lines, gift
Beautiful.
cards, just to say, your husband's thinking of you. So we're doing these little things because everyone now is part of the war, directly or indirectly, in some way. So this is where community comes in and plays a big part, of making things happen moving forward, and with no really timeline in sight as far as when this is going to end. The needs are actually going to grow because if we're going to start fighting in the north, which seems to be the likelihood that we're going to have a north
It's more than
invasion.
likely. It's almost definite.
So therefore, okay, so what does that mean? So I have friends who are serving in the south, resting right now to prepare for the north. If that happens, it's a different type of war situation.
Hmm. Hmm. Then I might not be so complacent. Um,
Well, you're
I
reporting on it all the time. You're reporting on this stuff.
well,
So
sure, I'm reporting on it, but when I ride my bicycle out on the road and I see lines and lines of armored personnel carriers um, carrying equipment that I've never seen on army personnel carriers, TOW missiles and some serious firepower, and I see that all the bases up here that are usually three-quarters empty are now, you have cars lined up because they're full of reservists. Israel is definitely at war.
yeah.
It's all of Israel's at war. Anyway, David, is there a spiritual message you can leave us with?
Well, again, because it started off with hubris, the Rabbi Sachs used to say, if a sin begins with hubris, then the downfall comes immediately.
Oof,
Um, and it's an important point because that happen is it's going to happen. The spirituality is, what does it mean to have a nation that has hubris in it? And I think this is the time to actually be humble because it could have been worse. It was horrific what took place on October 7th. But if Hezbollah coordinated with the Houthis, along with Hamas on October 7th,
we would have been
I don't
gone.
think you and I would be speaking
No,
today.
we
Okay,
would
I
be
want to make
gone.
that very clear. So God's hand is on the land, on the people. Um, and therefore, I think it's a time of reflection saying, okay, yes, Hamas deserves to be wiped out. And we have to counter the narrative that's out there in the streets outside of Israel that somehow are sympathetic, what somehow pro-Palestinian means to be pro-Hamas, which is beyond me, how that happened so fast with so much mobilization 2 weeks after the war, that this is already happening. Um, there's an Amalek spirit that is taking over some nations. I think now with the UNRWA, I think more leadership is understanding the complexity of how Hamas has its tentacles in different parts of society and using different parts of society to do harm to Israel, which 21% of its citizens are not Jewish and have equal rights as a citizen of the state. At the same time, um, we have, unfortunately, an Israeli leadership that likes to play politics or avoid
Right.
prison in order to in order to, I don't know, again, the sin of hubris. So I think it's a time of reflection and prayer and making sure like we give acknowledgement to God who prects this country every single day and have leadership finally that's governing properly for all. And that, that involves sometimes compromises or not aggressively taking an agenda and putting it down the throat of the
And
citizens.
this is also a time that we're seeing a lining up of alliances, who is where. And we see a lot of people who are standing with Israel in ways that humble me, that stun me, that are really beautiful. And at the same time, we have people in the streets of America screaming to gas the Jews. It's just, these are the times.
These are
Anyway,
the times, but what gives me hope, because we're
oh,
Jews at the end of the day, and our national anthem is Hatikva. It doesn't mean in our mind everything's going to be okay because we say everything's going to be okay. Rabbi Sachs has this thing that uh, the concept of hope is that we are involved in the process of making hope happen. It's not something that you sit back passively and it's going to work out. It's togetherness that we make this work. But what's quite fascinating is that although we have to appreciate and amplify the unity of Am Yisrael, most of the nation of Israel came together and is still working towards helping out the state of Israel, despite a different world before October 7th. This is truly different. But what's incredible, and I think many Jews are recognizing this, is many Christians who came in,
right.
stood in the gap, and said, "We are with you." And never again is something that we take seriously, not as words, but as deeds. the deeds to affirm their faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their understanding that Israel is the apple of God's eye, but willing to put deeds, actions in it. And therefore we are living in quite a unique and privileged era, that in the world after October 7th, we can finally move the pendulum of the kingdom of God a little bit further, but together with the nations that are standing with us.
Amen. Amen. God willing, we'll see that very soon too. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to be including all the links so you can be in touch with David. You can contact with him. You can get, God willing, updates on what he's up to, which is really amazing, holy stuff. And maybe if you want to do yourself a favor and take part in it, you can help him out, which is all good. It's a total goodness. David, thank you so much for stopping by, and God willing, we'll hear more good stuff from you soon.
Take care. Be well.